Hey everyone! Have you ever considered exploring the unknown, delving deep into the jungle to uncover mysteries you wish you'd have left alone? Befriend a tribe of scientist bears, only to defend their home from an attack by technologically augmented turbo-racists. Converse with the self-appointed Earl of Omonporg, who is also a fucking plant. Unlock your genetic potential and overcome the linear flow of time by eating a strange stew. Use this ability to survive your head being blown apart by simply making your consciousness travel back in time and changing the outcome of events. Wipe out a village of goat people only to steal one very important crystal. And as you delve deeper into the green hell, go from trying to survive the local wildlife to battling with ancient lost technology and eventually yourself. Sorry, that might have been a bit too much too quickly. Let's rewind to the beginning so everyone can follow what I'm talking about. Try to imagine you're traveling through the marshlands. The swampy terrain is wet, but not too difficult to cross, and the wildlife not too hard to deal with. To the west is the Great Salt Desert, empty, dry, and dead. Whatever may lie on the other side is not worth the risk of crossing. But to the east, a lush jungle full of life, its green canopies only broken up by the spindle, a magnificent pillar of chrome that rises from the earth into the firmament, so high you can't see where it ends. You know both these places are far too dangerous for you to venture into. Luckily, your destination is just a bit to the north, a small red rock formation that rises above the marshlands. When you make it from the swamp onto more solid ground, you're greeted by the locals, a small pack of regular baboons who show their hospitality by flinging rocks at you. The first one zips past your head and you scramble to get a hold of your weapon. You might be able to strike down one or two attackers, but as you do so, two more rocks hit your head. The blunt force kills you instantly. If you're unlucky, this might be the end of your first playthrough of Caves of Qud. But what the hell is going on here? Caves of Qud is a roguelike adventure RPG set in a hyper sci-fi post-apocalypse. You play through a world after the collapse of society, but like way after it happened. It has been centuries, scratch that, possibly millennia, since the hyper-advanced, probably spacefaring civilization disappeared. Whether they were destroyed or simply left this planet behind, no one can tell for sure. In the eons between then and now, multiple societies, cultures, and empires have sprung up, fallen into disarray, and were eventually buried in what is now known as the Jungle of Qud, a dense tropical forest that is full of incredible wonders and unknown horrors. This and a bit of the Salt Desert to the west is the board you play on. You're free to explore every single nook and cranny of it as long as you manage to survive. Because when you play in classic mode, the intended way, all save data is wiped on death. The game gives you a bunch of ways to approach this deceptively simple task, and every run you get to craft a completely unique character. But there is one choice which every player will need to make, being either a mutant or a truekin. Mutants are pretty obvious. They are humans who have undergone freakish mutations because of some ancient accident, experiment, nobody really knows. They have access to a bunch of weird powers and body modifications you will have to use effectively alongside your other equipment to survive the dangers of the jungle. Is gathering food and cooking too hard for you? Become a breatharian by developing photosynthetic skin and simply eat rays of sunlight. And unlike the real life cultists, you won't starve to death. Hate being constantly outnumbered? Manipulate the fabric of spacetime to pull a few versions of yourself from alternate timelines into this plane of reality to fight alongside you, evening the odds. True kin are non-mutated humans who have preserved their genetic makeup. They are all around a bit more capable than the mutants living out in the wild, which results in better starting attributes. Instead of mutations, true kin get cybernetic implants. These can be very powerful, but are also a lot harder to obtain compared to mutations. You will actually need to go out and find these technologies in the ruins of Qud. Constantly missing your shots and wasting precious ammunition? Install arm stabilizers that lock your joints as you're firing a weapon for improved accuracy. Is holding a melee weapon in your hands not really your style? Replace the bones in those hands with futuristic alloys for extra punching power. The character creation system goes much deeper than that, but your first few will be cannon fodder, so don't worry about understanding all of it right at the start. When you venture out into this world, you'll start in either a randomly generated village in one of the starting zones of your choosing, or the marshland town of Joppa. The whole of Qud is built like this, a standard map layout with certain pre-made locations, but in between them an endlessly varying world that is randomly generated every single run to keep things interesting. For new players, I would recommend starting in Joppa, as it gives you some early resources and opportunities to level up with simple quests, and you should take every advantage you can. But no matter where you spawn, there will always be a mechanist zealot visiting the town, urging people to go visit the holy site of the 6-day stilt. Now, you can choose to ignore him, but if you don't, this gives you a first, long-term, concrete goal to work towards. Gather enough resources to survive the trek through the desert, because at this point you are not surviving the jungle itself. Right from the start, the game leaves you to go do whatever you'd like. Explore the world and get stronger by killing enemies and gathering equipment. There is also a main questline with a story, which is rare for a roguelike, and this game's writing is pretty good, so I would encourage you to follow it, but you can abandon it whenever you'd like to go do something fun. For example, at one point the main quest sends you to a place called Bethesda Susa, where every floor is guarded by a powerful boss enemy I was not prepared to handle. So I escaped with just a sliver of health and decided to go do something else for a bit. When I opened up the world map, my eyes fell on a prominent feature that had dominated the landscape of Qud, the spindle. Remember that chrome tower that reaches into the sky so high no one knows where it ends, and during the day the light bouncing off of its surface makes it look like a solid pillar of light? Look, even the clock at the top of your UI uses this landscape picture of the jungle dominated by the spindle. So on my way I went, trying to avoid the monstrous beasts and plants of the deep jungle, until I arrived in the banana grove. Watch out here, the banana plants are carnivorous, they want to eat you. I walked through the ancient court of sultans and entered the village at the base of the structure Omon Porch, where I met its self-appointed earl standing guard at the gates of the monument, who was also a talking plant called Asphodel, pronounced Xexem. And that was a pre-programmed location. Think of all the weird shit that could happen in the randomly generated ruins, villages, and dungeons. No single video could ever encompass all the intricacies this game has to offer. I don't even know where the rabbit hole ends. All the stuff on this map, which I haven't even completed in 80 hours of play, is just the surface, the first layer of the onion, so to speak. The game is called Caves of Qud for a reason. Only 15% of players have ever reached the 6-day stilt, and when you get there, the game has barely started. So instead, let's go over some of Qud's core mechanics and see how they affect every single player before you make your journey into insanity. The first choice you'll have to make is choosing a gameplay mode. Classic is the intended permadeath experience, but if you want to respawn at settlements, pick roleplay instead. Wander makes most creatures neutral towards you and is meant to help you explore around the map. Daily introduces a new layer of difficulty on the permadeath formula. Every day you start out with a fixed character and world seed, which is not ideal for making it far into a run, but can force you to experiment with builds, and there exists some friendly competition between everyone playing the game on that day. If the entire character creator is too intimidating at first, don't worry, just pick one of the presets, they're a fine introduction to the game, but you'll want to start experimenting eventually. Both Mutants and Truekin have way too many classes, or callings and casts as they are called respectively, to go over all of them. But each one has their own starting equipment, skills, and bonuses to certain attributes. From the name, it should be obvious what most skills do. The words axe proficiency don't really leave you guessing. The level of each of your attributes will limit which skills you can buy with your skill points and how powerful certain skills are, so it's good to coordinate between them. There are multiple ways to raise your attributes, including stabbing yourself with a strange chemical cocktail, but the most reliable way is to spend attribute points you gain from leveling up. With all of that out of the way, let's get to turning your character into an absolute abomination by either stuffing them full of electronics or applying rapid evolution to their genome. Truekin only get a single implant at the start and will be stuck with it for a while, so consider every option carefully depending on how you'd like to play. But putting translucent skin on your back, which lets the enemies look directly at your spine bending around, gives you a decent flat upgrade to dodge value, meaning you can just avoid more attacks. If your favorite strategy is running away, pick the ankle tendons, and if you're the type of player to strategize about every single move, pick any crustal mortar cast in combination with the air current microprocessor to instantly reveal all up and down passageways on screen. Mutations are slightly more complicated. If you pick a morpho type, you can decide to only get physical mutations or only get mental mutations. Or if specializing isn't your thing, you can even leave the mutations you develop over the course of the game completely up to chance with unstable genome. Physical mutations are about what you'd expect from manipulating your biology. A second head, extra arms, extra legs, a set of wings, being really hairy, spider silk producing glands, transforming into any creature you touch, phasing through solid objects, the usual. The mental stuff is a bit more out there. Mind control, force barriers, psychic attack and defense, telling the future and manipulating space-time. Or if you're planning to invest a lot into crafting, take psychometry so you can understand the history, function and construction process of an item simply by holding it. The amount of mutations you start with is limited by a point buying system where the best abilities are the most expensive. But if you really want to make your build versatile, you can get more total points by giving your character defects. Defects are mutations with a detrimental effect on your character. They can range from only being able to eat meat, having to keep your entire body moist because you're a frog person, just being so ugly you're socially repugnant, all the way to having bones made out of paper, catching fire sometimes out of nowhere, randomly teleporting around uncontrollably, and there is even the possibility that you will have an evil version of yourself from an alternate timeline follow you around, and every time you enter a new location, there is a small chance this evil twin will attack you. Now, you might think that all these powers give mutants a pretty unfair advantage, just in the amount of options they get to solve problems, but that is mitigated by every adventurer's strongest ability, cooking. Psychometry combined with a Tinkerer build can be incredibly powerful. In fact, every run will probably use the crafting system in some capacity, but not everyone has access to this mutation. No problem, throw some sun-dried bananas into your cooking pot, and the resulting meal will give you a status effect relating to artifacts for the remainder of the day, likely allowing you to use psychometry for the rest of the day, no matter who you are. Every ingredient you can collect throughout the world gives your meals certain effects. In the beginning, these will be simple buffs and resistances, but once you introduce some of the more exotic stuff, like pouring medicinal tonics over turtle meat, things can get crazy. Can't get past some enemies using fire attacks? Congealed blaze on its own makes you more resistant to fire. Combine it with star apple jam to regenerate health every time you are set on fire. Finding these synergies within and between the systems of Caves of Qud is the real goal of the game. You can go around following quest lines, exploring, gathering equipment, and making your character stronger, but to get better at playing the game, you need to experiment and learn, sometimes beyond the intended limits of the game. So, you leave Joppa, probably for a second time to get revenge on whatever killed you at Red Rock, move yourself on the overworld map, and hopefully arrive without getting lost. By now, you should have picked up on the importance of either closing or maintaining distance. Baboons are pretty strong at melee and mid-range, or more accurately, you are still very squishy, so if you have good accuracy and a ranged weapon, shoot at them from further than they can throw. If you can't, close the distance. For some reason, the most popular video about Caves of Qud that will ever be made recommends you start off as a mutant. This is, in my humble opinion, so feel free to disregard it completely, a terrible idea. Mutants start off with worse attributes compared to Truekin, and the tools in their toolbox are way more complicated to use depending on the build. Truekin start off with only one special ability to manage, which can just be a flat bonus to not getting hit, keeping the combat simple on your end and allowing you to get a feel for the importance of proper positioning and evasive movement. Please do not forget you have the ability to move diagonally by clicking or using the numpad. Most enemy AI feels like it has monkey intelligence, so this is a quick way to create some distance between the two of you. Also, ranged weapons will be the most effective at these short distances. Effectively fighting enemies always comes down to understanding how they work from experience and experimentation, especially deeper inside the jungle, where you aren't fighting baboons, snapjaws, and simple bandits, but chrome machines equipped with missile launchers and beings from higher dimensional planes in environments that become more and more hostile and alien to you. For example, Bethesda Susa 2 layers deep is guarded by a troll called Jotun who parts limbs, who is so strong he wields a two-handed battle axe in each hand. On top of that, he also gets throwing axes that inflict 2d12 damage on hit. Have fun! Multiple failures later, I decided to call it quits and stopped playing for a while. Then I got the idea to make this video and got back into Qud with new characters. I realized the obvious solution was in front of me all along. Anything thrown ends up on the ground, where I can pick it up. So a small tactical retreat later, I picked up a few dozen axes and politely returned them into Jotun's skull. While I was doing this, Jotun did hit me back a few times for a good bit of damage, but because he only carries 16 of these axes in total, he was soon left without any ranged options. During the fight, he also chopped off one of my arms, but luckily my AI-powered implanted medical assistant immediately injected me with growth hormone that made the limb grow back. After I was done with him, I did go and put the severed arm in my own inventory for safekeeping, because I want to find out what effect cloning fluid and certain healing items have on it. As you keep playing, you'll learn more about this strange, hostile world you've journeyed into. The knowledge I possess now from first-hand experience would sound like the ramblings of a madman to any player just starting out. But no matter how much you learn about this world, it never becomes a friendly place. Eventually, you will slip up and fall prey to one of the many dangers lurking everywhere. Depending on how far you progressed, those could be a pack of goatmen or esper hunters traveling the waves of the psychic aether. At which point, you get to do it all over again in a new version of Qud where the random generation and simulated environment have created new challenges for you to overcome. And not only the map tiles will have changed, certain gameplay elements also vary in between runs. For example, throughout the world, certain ruins will contain books. Most of these will be randomly generated gibberish. Pro tip, give these to the Stilt Librarian for basically free XP or use them in trade, but everything with a colored name is actually legible. Often these just give you general information about the world and its history, but a few contain knowledge vital to your survival. One book, the Corpus Cholis, has cures for every disease or infection you can contract inside the jungle. Yes, that is something that can happen. Don't panic, you'll be fine. These cures change depending on the seed of your world, so prior knowledge can't make the challenge of dungeons like, for example, Golgotha, which heavily relies on disease as an environmental hazard, completely obsolete. That is, at the end of the day, Caves of Qud's biggest strength. It could have all the same gameplay mechanics, but if it was set up as a regular open world RPG, it would still be a fun game, but the deep layers of random generation and the variance that springs forth from them turn it into the kind of game people have poured an ungodly amount of hours in ever since the first version in 2010. The deep simulation combined with permadeath create a truly addicting experience that draws you into this cursed jungle world, and as you learn to overcome its many challenges, you can find a kind of alien beauty in the chaos. On that final note, I don't think people realize how well the music and sound design set the mood for this game and squeeze out every last drop of style out of these simple yet beautiful graphics. So, you've made it to the end of the video. Thank you for staying this long. This one took a while to finish, like over a month of work, just between recording all the gameplay, finding all the right assets to put in. It was a lot, but I'm pretty proud of the result, and let me know what you think of it. As the work kept dragging on, I got kind of worried because, good news everyone, in the second quarter of this year, Caves of Qud is finally coming out of early access with its 1.0 release, which will completely overhaul the UI and many visual elements, which would make all my footage completely outdated. That also means there has never been a better time to get yourself a copy of Caves of Qud, because with the full release, the price will increase, but at this point, the game is already almost finished. So if you're interested, buying it now is literally just a plain good deal. And finally, if this video was interesting or entertaining, subscribe so you can also see the next one. Bye.